All right, we have a full house when it comes to a stage right now. So if we could start at the very end there and give an intro about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Steven Hiemstra. Probably have to
Take it out.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Hi, Steven Hiemstra. I'm from Holland, running Stamped Records and being involved in marketing, garage management on the music side.
I'm Josh Nicol. I'm the Director of Independent Label Services at SoundCloud, which is very much a new part of the business for us. I've got a team based in New York, London, Berlin, and Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Matthew Daniel. I'm based in Beijing. We have NetEase Cloud Music. We have 600 million users. Pretty much a lot of dance music is doing well on our service, just for context. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nikhil Shah, co-founder of Mixcloud, platform for DJ sets and radio shows.
Hi, I'm Nick Roden. I'm Senior Vice President at InGrooves. We provide distribution, marketing, and technology services to independent labels and artists around the world. I'm based in London, but I work with our team in our offices around the globe.
Shit. Oh, sorry. Did I say that loud? I'm Seth Combs, CMO of Beat Fever. We're a mobile music app where you actually tap to the beat of the song. So we gamify music and drive listeners out to all these incredible services.
I'm Terry Wirasinghe. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Beatport. We're the largest digital download platform in electronic music, and we recently started streaming into DJ software.
And I'm Tiffany. I come from Rising Digital, which is a digital agency based in Leeds, and previously I was at 360 and Red Light. So let's get into it. This panel's quite short. I want to get into the health of online streaming. It's clearly here to stay. There's a lot of players. How have you guys thought aspects of that with a lot of players and such, and design of platform? How have you guys thought it's been cooperative, and then how has it been competitive within the music industry? It's a loaded question here, but go ahead.
Overall, I think the health of online streaming is good. I think having a lot of platforms, it's clearly quite a crowded marketplace, but I think everybody has their point of difference, their unique selling point. I think as a platform, it's really important to understand your audience and how you're unique. At SoundCloud, we typically have a very young user audience, and we look to empower our creators as much as possible. So we recently launched on our premium monetization program, distribution to other platforms such as Spotify and Apple, because we want to see people come onto SoundCloud, be successful, build an audience, and also have success on other platforms, because we know that each platform is different and can offer something different to what we can.
That's great.
Yeah, I can build on that. So yeah, absolutely optimistic, positive outlook. The numbers speak for themselves. After 15 years of decline in recorded music, the last 3 years have been growing. What I would say is that that's great, and we've now got to a stage where the foundation of streaming is in place. I think of it as music like water. Every single human being in the world at some point ought to and will need to have an all-you-can-eat streaming service subscription. But then what I'm thinking about now is what happens next. What's the diversity and the new business models that sit on top of that? Because once you've got access to a massive catalog, I think people should be spending more money on music. And what we're thinking about a lot of Mixcloud is how do you create new business models and a subscription model actually around an artist. That's what we're launching at the moment.
I think one of the things that's important is the monetization model for artists, for labels, is different depending on what platform you're actually going to be placing your content on. And some content is better suited to certain types of platforms. So when we talk about streaming as a whole, there are actually multiple different facets that you have to think of before thinking about what your strategy in streaming is actually going to be.
Yeah, I think that's true. Everyone talks about streaming as a format, but I actually don't think it is. I think all the different platforms are formats in their own way. I think you need to be looking at each platform, who the audience is, what the reach is, and what your own audience is, and how you want to drive to them. The competition's huge. To the major platforms now, there's 40,000 tracks a day being uploaded, and everybody wants the same real estate. You can't necessarily rely on each platform to do your marketing for you or to do your editorial for you. You've got to be thinking about driving to them yourself.
I think also that's possibly makes it the hardest thing about streaming at the minute is there's so much really good music out there that doesn't connect or doesn't get discovered. But the flip side to that is a track that was released 3 years ago now might surface and go on and have a lot of success, and that's a really healthy thing.
Yeah. I think the first wave is just access. In China, we have 600 million users. Some of the biggest markets in the world. You have South America, all of that. Having access, there is no question. Streaming is the way to go. Physical is actually limitations in distribution. So beyond that, I think like what Nick mentioned, it's how do you make a differentiation?
I think I'm talking here from a label and an artist perspective more than as a platform. We're very happy that all these platforms are there and we want to use them all, but you always have to see like which platform is the best for a certain type of music or a certain type of profiling, because there's different stages for an artist. But first things is that all these platforms are there is amazing, and that they do all these great things.
Yeah. So you've touched on artist marketing and label marketing. I would say a lot of streaming has brought into this search for the perfect track. Now with electronic music, there's mixes and albums. How has that changed marketing within your platforms, and even with Beat Fever, leveraging other technology to help market some of these? Either it's derivative content, which is mixes and remixes, and then the artist work as a whole as an album versus singles. Another super loaded question, but
I mean, from a Beat Fever perspective too, from marketing, streaming's a behavioral change, right? We actually are back to actually paying for music in a lot of ways. Taking it into your point, 40,000 tracks a day, it's overwhelming. And you look at it truly just as a platform to put your music on. And from a marketing perspective, from what we look at too, we look at every artist as a brand. We go, how do we build that brand? And then we look at the trends in technology as a whole too. There's 131 million last count smart speakers in the States alone, 36%. And you just go, hey, play me some chill music. You don't even know what's playing. You don't care what the song is or what the artist is. And so it's becoming more relevant than ever to create that emotional connection between each artist and each music fan, right? It's something really special to create it, and we were able to create it before, and we can create it again. It's just we have to adapt consistently.
Yeah, and be visible, like what you say. If you ask for chill music, what is it gonna play? How are you gonna like change it that they're gonna play your music if you make chill music?
That's right.
These things are like really interesting to think about and to make work on these different platforms. But it's a whole new way of thinking instead of doing a billboard somewhere outside. You have to think about like how AI is thinking and how computers are thinking instead of being visible outside, which is also still very important, of course. But these things are like you have to take in mind.
Yeah, and when building on this idea of listen to the chill playlist, what's happening is that recall of the artist and the track is massively going down. So there's this concept that's been coined by an analyst called Mark Mulligan. He calls it the super streamer. So there was a lot of people out there who are listening to more music than they ever used to listen to, but they're not a super fan, they're a super streamer. And they listen horizontally to lots and lots of different content. They don't actually often know what the hell they're listening to. They don't have a deep connection with specific artists and specific creators. And that's, I think, a challenge for the industry and for the creators in the market. And so that's another thing that we're thinking about a lot, is how can you actually deepen that connection? And I actually fundamentally believe that when there's more and more music, the curators are the core versus the algorithm, because actually people want to connect through other real people.
What we have on our service in NetEase Cloud Music is we're one of the most social platforms in the world. A song is judged a hit by the number of comments it has. I mean, some of these comments are like giving context to the song. Especially in China, when it comes to international music, they don't know much about the artist. Users will say what they feel about the music. It's not a pitchfork review where they talk about the production. These people say, this is where I met this girl and I fell in love with her. Some of it is really cringeworthy, but it communicates the feeling of the song to a whole lot. And some songs even have 100,000 comments. That's considered a mega hit. That's engagement. So this whole debate about lean back listening and so on, this is one way we found a way around it. And we can measure the engagement. We have a weightage for everything. So it's not number of streams. Number of streams can be meaningless in this playlisting world. It could be background music. So we have a weightage for all of that. I think that might be a way forward. I think everyone is desperately trying to see how to measure it. There are playlists that work on Spotify and those that don't work.
I think, that's fascinating that that's how tracks are surfaced on NetEase. We talk about discovery a lot in music, and I actually think that the definition of discovery has changed. We're being served things that the algorithm already thinks that we're going to like. Isn't surely discovery about finding things that we don't know that we like as well? And so if it's coming from fan engagement, yeah, that's a fascinating mechanic.
Just to add, I think more and more marketing campaigns as a whole have got to be creator-driven. There's way more pressure on the creators and the artist management team than there ever has been before because they're so exposed. So, creatives now got to find a way to speak to their audience, connect to their audience, and build their profiles. And then I think once you figure that out, there's enormous amount of possibilities because of the variation of platforms. I think I think the greatest example I've seen of that this year is Marshmello's collaboration on Fortnite, because that's very in line with who he is as an artist. He's reaching a mass audience, which is very active, and what an amazing event.
Nice. So it's clear there's room in the market share. Now, with new companies going into streaming, I think this past week we heard about TikTok. And that's huge. It could totally affect how we discover music and also how we consume it. I'd also say I think there's a whole new wave with even Instagram. Like there's the Instagram club the account called Tale of Clubs, where now previously on Mixcloud, SoundCloud, or even 1001 track lists, a lot of discoveries came from like IDs of tracks. How has that kind of been nurtured, and how has that helped some of your platforms or marketing on the general, like with label and artist marketing? Like I think there's still value in IDs of tracks, and with new players in the market. How do you anticipate on marketing on there or changing your ways of distributing music?
First thing I'm going to say is that I think it's really funny that we've got to that world where Instagram track IDs are actually being used. Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember, Fortet did an interview and he talked about how, I think it was his resident advisor mix, and he was asked in his interview, how do you discover music? And he's like, well, I go to Instagram and I have one phone playing the music and another phone on Shazam, and I find my music on Instagram. And everyone was like, shit, is that how you find your music? And I think the whole thing was a practical joke. But it actually now is the reality.
It's real. It's here to stay, and you can see like TikTok going into it. And I think I think it's crazy, but it's also at the same time, it's like these partnerships, whether it's hardware integration or tech leveraging, like it's definitely here, and it matters. I'm not sure if every platform has thought about integration right now. I obviously know Instagram and Spotify have, but not a lot of electronic music shows up. So I
think you always hope you will be visible on those kind of platforms like TikTok, but you can't force it. So you have to come up with a really good idea, or your track should be like a perfect fit for someone to use it, and that other people will follow. So you can't force it. You try to, of course, and you try to make like plans to let people use it, but it's really hard to trigger them. But
I think it's also about being an early adopter. I think, you know, Martin Garrix was obviously a very prominent example of an early adopter of TikTok. He came up with a catchy idea to do with his song. The idea spread over the platform, and you know that got him millions of fans that you know maybe didn't know him before that. And you know that's a really important thing when you're looking at social media or when you're looking at new types of media, is being an early adopter, coming up with those ideas at the beginning. They're going to build your presence on those platforms so much faster than you would on a mature platform like a Facebook or a Twitter these days, where it's much harder to get that kind of fan engagement.
I think also, I mean, we have labels all the time to say, I'm going to come up with a great idea for TikTok. And you're like, okay. What are you doing with everything else? How does it connect as part of your overall plan? Because not everyone's on TikTok. Not everyone's in their demographic. Again, it goes back to this idea of finding your audience and owning your audience and being able to drive back. And also what the data that you get back as well, being able to read and understand the data that comes back from these different services. But the news this week, I mean, everyone's been talking to me the last couple of days about the potential TikTok rollout. If it's a way that we can, as an industry, truly monetize this, then fantastic. It's going to be great. And they have 600 million monthly users, right? And,
Yeah.
So
I mean, have you guys felt the pressure to integrate with some of these companies, or?
Let me talk about that. TikTok, nobody can actually describe what TikTok is. TikTok is the revenge of the 15-year-olds against the 50-year-old gatekeepers. That's what it is. You have music now. I can't believe it. One point we're 50-year-olds. Now we're 15-year-olds. This should be the direction. And there's songs, there's no rhyme or reason why a song becomes a hit. It's just marketing. So if they want to start a streaming service, start it, because there are few platforms here that have taken years to develop a streaming service. It takes a lot of trial and error to do that. So let's not get into the media hype. They're starting it, another Spotify killer, Apple killer, and so on. And it's a Chinese product too, so it's close to, we can observe what's going on. And the second part of my thing is back to what Nikhil said. I have an open question to all DJs who do radio shows, podcasts, and so on. It's one file, there's no ID. What's the objective of doing that? If I like a song, do I have to also have Spotify open to ID it? What is the point? And Shazam doesn't recognize it because it's a brand new song, it's not Shazam. So I run a music service and I see all these podcasts and so on. What's the point of putting the song there? I haven't got an answer from anyone.
Well, I mean, the point is, first of all, a mix is very different to a selection of songs in a playlist. I mean, if we lived in a world where we only consumed track by track in a playlist, I think the world would be a way more boring place, because the skill and the artistry involved in making really well handcrafted mixes and radio shows is very important. And then, you know, there is technology to actually identify those songs and display them back to the users, so to the listeners. So yeah, like a radio show, a DJ set is a way to discover. And there's still work to do to make sure that the identification is 100%, not 80%, but it's getting better and better.
But I think most of the time it can't be identified. I think the DJs sometimes don't want it to be identified. So sometimes I question, DJs are spending, they are really busy. Every week some have a show and they are stressed with it. I ask them like, why? But why are you doing it? I still don't have a great answer. I have the platform for it, but I don't know why they do it. You also have.
Yeah, I mean, we have a platform for it. And I think the very simple answer to that is the week by week is a serialized, regular format, and it keeps people coming back as listeners week after week. And that regular engagement you have from that core fan base is enormously valuable, actually, compared to just putting out, like, you know, if you're putting out music, it might be a track every few weeks or an album every 6 to 9 months. That regular weekly, you know, the way that people watch television, you're turning that into a habit in music, and that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, so you've touched lightly on the sense of discovery, and I think that's the most important feeling when you see someone listening to being an engaged user, or someone listening and going, okay, chill music, and now they're on the start of something. They're liking a fan, or they're liking an artist in the start of, a loyalty. How have you seen that change on each of your platforms, or like even with Beat Fever? Are there more artists that are favored because of the way that you guys have gamified it, or like the sense of discovery with Beatport? Beatport's kind of known for making like these great DJ food. Like you go there and you get it. And with Mixcloud and SoundCloud, obviously derivative content, I would say, is really spurred discovery.
Yeah, I think way I use SoundCloud, I think it's very much a crate diggers platform, because if you like a DJ's mix or you're into an artist, you go and listen to it, and then you can see what they've liked. You can go and listen to that, then you go and listen to another mix, and before you know it, you've spent 2 hours listening to new music, which is great. So for us, that's our best way of discovery, I think.
And we're still a hand-curated platform, so we have like a real human being whose job is techno, a real human being whose job is house and deep house, and they sort through the 25,000 releases each week and curate the store in that way. And then we combine that with choice lists from all of the creators in the world. So we have hundreds of new charts being added by all of the big DJs in the world. So when you navigate around Beatport, you've got a combination of the chart, which shows you internationally what's selling within the type of music that you like, something that's hyper curated in a way that we go into micro genres of dance music. And then you've got a specialist within those micro genres that's taking that huge flow and reducing it to something that you can cut through very easily in bite-sized chunks.
Nice.
I know for us, from our platform perspective, from a gamification, we got to 10 million music fans playing, and we're like, oh, let's add thousands of songs. And right when we got past 500, we noticed a dip off in just the amount of people were playing. And then at 1,000, it completely dropped off the cliff, and it was a matter of too much choice. Just at 1,000, and we just we never thought that would happen at even that small a level. And now we realize we're going to be curating at any given time about 200 songs a month, and just trying to help serve discovery to these platforms like NetEase, Spotify, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, like all of them. And it's really interesting to see it. And I can't imagine being a music fan today outside the music industry and even knowing where to begin.
Yeah, it's clear, even with Spotify's playlisting, even YouTube's got into it. How do you guys keep it fair? Like, how do you guys, whether it's that person, how do you know they're qualified outside of like the other DJ lists out there? How do you guys keep it fair, like curating, or is it purely on numbers? Clearly with NetEase, it's on engagement. Is that listed somewhere?
The comments are all, the number of comments, everyone uses that. We have something like a gold standard, gold record. It's 999 plus. If you get 1,000 comments, it's a hit. Yeah.
Okay.
I think for SoundCloud curation, we're just getting into it. We've only softly launched in America. We're figuring it out still. It's going to launch in English-speaking markets in the next couple of months, and then in other language markets shortly after that. So we're working it out. I think, the thing we're trying to do is just try and keep it uniquely SoundCloud, and always stick to that, and always think about your USP. What is a SoundCloud user? Who is our audience? And focusing our curation on that, rather than getting hung up on a Spotify model or a YouTube model, because they're doing what they do, and they do it very well.
I guess my view on this is probably a little bit the controversial view on the panel, that when the platforms curate, you put a lot of power in the platforms, but actually we have a world where there are millions of incredibly talented DJs out there. Let the DJs curate, There are trusted human experts out there already curating, and I think actually fans should be following more of those DJs and less of the platform playlists.
Like I say, it's that combination for us. So we've got DJs curating, we've got the team curating, and then we also have the individual who has their account on Beatport curating for themselves. So as you buy music on Beatport, as you browse Beatport, you can follow the labels and you can follow the artists. And those bigger labels become more successful because every time one of their tracks is uploaded to the platform, everybody who's followed them gets notified about their release. And one thing that we found that, 15 years into Beatport, some of the labels had got so big that it became difficult for smaller new labels to be competitive on the platform. So we introduced a new system called Hype, which basically created a second tier of music on Beatport within each genre, where you're not competing against Adam Beyer or Maceo Plex when you're putting out a release, but you're rather competing with other new, fresh music. And by giving that avenue for the 35 million people that visit us every year, we actually saw an increase of around an average of 90% for the smaller labels year on year, just by giving exposure and giving them merchandising within the store.
It's amazing. And from the label point of view, how have those relationships been?
We are obviously not creating anything.
Yeah.
Well, we hope we are being created in those playlists.
You create the music.
We create the music, of course, but then it's up to these guys to put it in the playlist. And I think it's different genres, because a NetEase or Spotify or Apple Music or those kind of types of DSPs, they are used by the consumer, and most of them, they just want to hear music. They are not like specialists. And the people who more go to SoundCloud or Mixcloud or Beatport, they know what they want, and they're going to search for it. They're going to browse. So it's two different things, I think, here. But yeah, of course, it's very important to be in those lists and to be visible in there.
Actually, just to make a point here, we don't create our playlist. We have, but we don't. We're not a gatekeeper. We have 600 million user-generated playlists, and then the algorithms push the playlist to users who have similar tastes. So we decentralize. Ironically, it's kind of democratic. Yeah.
I think the playlists are, as a distributor, we get asked this every day. It's like, which playlists are we going to be in? And obviously, they are important. I can hear our head of marketing in my ear saying he wants to get T-shirts made that say playlists are not a marketing campaign. Because they do help, obviously, but we can't rely on them. Labels can't rely on getting them. Everybody wants to be on the big lists on Spotify, for example, but now some of those big lists are part personalized. They're part unique to me or unique to you. So how do you work with that? It is much more. Also, we talked about voice a little bit before. Voice changes that. Voice search. We've seen various voice devices coming out in the last few years, smart speakers. There's the talk about Spotify's car thing that is coming out. They're developing at the moment. That's about mood and genre. If you're in the car, you say, play me house. It's not going to be about a specific playlist. It's going to be about how you've curated, how you tag your music yourself. Metadata, making sure that everything is clean on your records, that you know that like what it sounds like, what it appeals to, subgenres, all of this. It's going to be much more important in the future, I think.
I think what's really important as well is the difference between active and passive listeners. And I think when I talk about SoundCloud, trying to find their point of difference, we don't want to get to a point where artists are having millions of streams, which, that's great. But in terms of millions of streams where it's just passive listeners, we want to help people build an audience and a fan base and ultimately go and sell tickets, because I still think that's probably the greatest indicator of where an artist is at in their career, and that's always going to be ticket sales. So I think, as platforms, we should be working closely with managers and labels to help, sell tickets ultimately as well.
Yeah. With ticketing, ticketing in the US is obviously, that's a tough one. It's very much a real estate market, but you had mentioned with voice, I heard before this panel we were talking, I heard a couple conversations on AI. The integration of hardware, I think that's a big one. What are the priorities of that, and how does it benefit each one of you?
We've just introduced our streaming model, and it's a fairly different streaming model to most consumer plays. At Beatport, we've always been focused on DJs. We're a platform that's made by DJs for DJs, and one thing that we've seen is definitely the younger generation today, and a lot of people say kids today don't download, but actually they're not even kids anymore. They're in their 20s and they haven't downloaded. So we've got an entire new generation that we need to find a new way of appealing to, even in the DJ download market. And Beatport's a platform that has bucked the trend. I mean, digital downloads in the US have been dropping by around 50% a year, a couple of years running now, but we've grown 3 years running as a download platform. But streaming directly into DJ software, which is what we're starting to do, that's really going to start cleaning up on a couple of new customer areas, we think. The first is really that beginner DJ. When I started to DJ many moons ago, it took me a year to get together a collection of records big enough to be able to put together a set. Now with a streaming service like this, you can instantly have a huge collection of music and really just concentrate on learning how to DJ. And then still today, download your music, because you do need to have a connection in a nightclub still. And then the second use case that we have is really for our established users. And buying records in a record shop 20 years ago, you would needle drop an entire record, pick a few and take them home. When we went digital, we moved into shorter previews, which wasn't really the same kind of experience that you had going into a record shop. With our new Beatport Link system, you're able to have millions of tracks in your home, wherever you're traveling, in your DJ software, and you can try them all with your collection, and then again, purchase the ones that you want to DJ. And as you've heard from our Denon announcement yesterday, we're also going to be offering offline storage, in that case directly within their DJ hardware, but that will also be available in major DJ software in the very near future as well. So quite a big one there, but
it sounded like it was a huge priority, and it sounds like it's definitely going to change.
Yeah, it's going to change it, but again, not overnight. I mean, the amount of people are just like, I'm not going to use that right now. No, of course you're not. Like, when I worked at Pioneer on CDJs 17 years ago, people didn't switch from vinyl straight away. Again, with digital DJing like Traktor and Serato, it took a while for people to make those moves. And we're at the beginning of streaming for DJs. And right now, it's a new market. It's going to be new customers coming in, and it's a good time to be an independent record label.
I mean, from our perspective, we want to bring music to life. We want to connect artists and music fans like never before. So our goal is, how do we combat that lean back attitude in a lot of ways? And what we want to do, we have the game portion, but we consistently put artist name, song name, album cover up. We create immersive worlds so that you feel like you're opening up liner notes again, for those of you that open liner notes. And we want to bring it to life that way. And we just added a live streaming platform, which we were talking about before, which is, we're in 150 countries. So you can tour in 150 countries from the comfort of your own studio or home. And we just unlocked 2 weeks ago the ability to send money to artists via like a tipping, which is like what 10-cent Music and a bunch of other platforms do, because we go, is it possible for an artist to actually make money while they're making music or performing from home?
It's a great avenue.
And on SoundCloud as well, we've got various software integrations happening in the DJ world. Obviously, DJ culture is very much a key part of who we are as a platform and its identity, and mixes on the platform are a key part of our core user experience. So we're really excited about these integrations. That a kid, 14-year-olds, can learn how to DJ and access 200 million tracks which we have on our platform, is really exciting. And I think if it means that it's going to develop the next, somebody might get go on to have a career out of DJing from using this software, that's really exciting. And also what we've seen a lot on SoundCloud over the years is the emergence of new genres. And I think this will ultimately bring new genres to the forefront.
How about you?
Yeah, I'll just pick up on what Seth said. That I think that's a really interesting area you're exploring. If you think about that kind of tipping model and that direct-to-fan model, that's actually really big in other industry verticals. So in video gaming, the way that Twitch has grown its business is incredibly impressive and very unique and doesn't exist yet in music. So you've got these channel subscriptions, you've got people tipping creators, and this enormous economy around fans really actually spending a lot of money directly with the streamers that they love. And we fundamentally believe at Mixcloud that there's an opportunity there in the music industry to build a lot more direct-to-fan revenue streams.
I think we have to be a bit careful about tipping. There's a lot of people saying tipping is the way to go. You have to analyze, for example, on Tencent. It's guys tipping girls singing, amateur singers, because they look pretty, they're tipping them. On our service, we have tipping for independent Chinese artists who actually need the money because they're not getting money any other way. It's the only way. But if you're already paying a subscription one way, you're not going to tip them more. There's always another reason why. If someone looks cute, they get more money. That's actually what's happening in China. But there are articles out there that said that's what Spotify should do. You're not going to tip Taylor Swift unless you look at what's happening on the Korean pop market. That is not music. That's idols. They are beyond what the average music fan is about. So we have to be careful about that. Yeah.
Got it. And then I would love to hear the last point of view from label and artists.
On the tipping side.
Not the tipping side, more of like integration of hardware, because that's got to change the game for some of your artists.
Yes, it will. Where there's a lot of hardware like supporting all these platforms,
Yeah.
but again, the visibility of your tracks is important to be available on this hardware. So I'm a big supporter of all these hardware initiatives. Also, like the ones with Spotify,
Yeah.
the one for in the car. I mean, like this is the way to go, and also the voice thing, which is getting bigger and bigger, is I think an easier way to listen to music, because usually you have to type in a title, or first you have to like get your DSP up and running. But now you just say, "Get me some music." So I think the consuming of music will be more and more than now already, so, which is a good thing for music. So yeah, we're big supporters of all these hardware initiatives.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we're gonna wrap it up and get a couple questions from anyone out there for any of these 7 people. No questions.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, thank you everyone here, and
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.